I hope you realize that the way God acts is so beautiful. There is so much thought and sensitivity. There is so much more than we would normally expect, and sometimes there is so much less. When the centerpiece of all history came, the resurrection of Christ, the ultimate victory over death, there were no great parties. No banners, no party favors, no singing, "We are the champions." No cigars, no champagne, no great spreads of food. There was thrilling excitement, yes, but there was not frivolity. So an interesting thought is, how did Jesus celebrate his victory over death with the resurrection? Well, the first thing he did was disguise himself as a gardener to cheer a sad follower. Interesting thought. But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb, and as she wept, she stooped to look inside the tomb, and she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had lain, one at his head and one at his feet. They said to her, Woman, why are you weeping?" And she said, "They have taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they have laid him." Having said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" And supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you've taken him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I'll take care of him. I'll take him away." And Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. She recognized him. The simplicity of all this is so like God. Not gaudy, just a simple conversation that will never be forgotten. What Jesus did for her at that moment was transforming, and every woman Mary would ever know would be challenged by her experience. Jesus showed himself first to a woman, as opposed to her society. Of course, she was treated with honor and dignity. Jesus gave her a completely new vision of her value and every woman's value to God. This in spite of the fact that she did not believe, was not listening when Jesus was talking about his death and resurrection. Here in his first appearance, personal, sensitive, and understanding, there are no attacks for her doubt, no condemnation for her disbelief, no suggestions on what faith means, just a loving care of a personal return. And Jesus knew that Mary's life would never be the same. This is the real celebration of victory. So like God, so like Christ, so kind. The second thing Jesus did was disguise himself as a fellow traveler to encourage two lonely doubters. This is the scripture that was read a moment ago. While the whole world waited while Jesus walked with these two guys off to a town 7 miles away. Amazing. No one knew except Mary and Simon, and in spite of the rumors, Jesus commits all of this time to these two unnamed and unknown, devastated men. They were leaving Jerusalem because it was all over, of course, the rumors. But their sad lament was, "We thought he was the one, but we're finished with the ups and downs, the excitement and the devastation. It's simply too much for us. We're going back to work. Let them carry on if they want to. We're finished with this spiritual stuff for a while." How relaxed Jesus is. Take a few hours to walk and chat. Not in a hurry, as if he has all the time in the world. Not too busy with the celebrations in heaven, of course. Not frantic about what the disciples were doing, fearing and wondering back in Jerusalem. not too tired of being on earth with all us goofy humans. Just patient and gentle. And the lesson, starting from the beginning, he explained it all, the theology and the history of God's plan and redemption, even allowing them the opportunity to say goodbye and let him walk away if they were still too tired. And when they wanted more, wanted to learn more, he said, okay, I will give you more. And he revealed himself. This is the real victory celebration of life and of Christ. Their lives were transformed. They would not have any trouble being witnesses in the future. They would not be embarrassed being called Christians. They were now men. Real men who were faithful, courageous, and committed. And that, for Christ, was victory. And even that doesn't complete what was going on. The third thing Jesus did was quietly enter the disciples' gathering to end the confusion and bring peace. He slipped in unannounced. Suddenly, Jesus is there. No drum rolls, no angels announcing it, no set-up man saying, "Here's Jesus." None of it. He quietly enters his friends' gatherings and simply says, "Shalom, peace be with you." Quiet, sensitive, patient, loving. Jesus returns to these, his followers, who had run away, denied him, thought it was over, lost their faith, and were now frightened to death, and he humbly gives them peace. Peace that had a new meaning after the resurrection, of course. For now, they were believers. This was not a time for raucous parades and great shows and impressive displays. It was just enough that Jesus was alive. To transform lives were Christ's victory celebration. So victory for Jesus was the time to honor and encourage his followers. Jesus gave Mary the freedom to express her deep grief and then realized that her grief was for naught. Jesus taught his two defeated followers that it was not over, it was just the beginning. And Jesus gave peace and hope to his unfaithful, frightened disciples. One observation on an Easter Sunday morning. When God is involved, how things appear may not be the complete story. Simply because it doesn't look like a victory doesn't mean it isn't. When God is involved, there is always more. Bringing good out of evil is what God does. Changing despair to hope, redeeming the lost. God is doing it all the time. From the life-changing to the simple things that encourage, from deep hurts and the hard things that need to be done, God is with us, always, working things out that we may not understand or even comprehend for our growth, our maturity, and our fun. And many of us never understand this. As we trust God, we should see him protect, help, provide, heal, care, and redeem. Just a simple story. A year and a half ago, when our landlord told us that we needed to move, Shirley and I were crushed. We had lived comfortably for 5 years in our lovely apartment. It was home. It was where our children had visited. We were safe and secure, knew the shops, could walk to for most of our purchases. The Thursday market with its wonderful vegetables, food, clothing, and fun was just a few yards away. Aslam, our driver, had a lovely place to live out back, and now we needed to move. The job of finding a new place, the work of moving all of our stuff, the job of redecorating our home. Some of you know the madness of that. changing all the church documents because the old address was on them, all in the middle of Shirley's most debilitating cancer treatment. All of that was an overwhelming thought. I was not happy. The timing was completely wrong. We spent weeks looking over 40 different apartments, and finally, 18 on Rock. What a gift. What a beautiful place it is. What a great place to call home for our final 18 months in India. Open, light, second story, so what we see are trees and birds. A wonderful place for Shirley to recover from her treatment. Space to entertain, plenty of parking, no congestion, easy to find. The final year in our new place was worth all the frustration and the effort. And it was a great apartment to help recruit a new pastor. When God is involved, how things appear, may not be the complete story. The crisis turned out to be a blessing. The loss became a privilege. The hurt taught many lessons. And sometimes we get ourselves so caught up in what we see, what we assume, how things should work out but aren't. We forget that God often doesn't do it normally. He always is concerned for our best and our needs. What God says is true. I have come to give you life and give you life abundantly. And there is something very personal for all of us here, I think. There are times when we fail, times when we deny, times when we doubt. When we get so caught up in ourselves that God is little more than an afterthought at best. We can become so discouraged with ourselves, thinking we are failures, and forget that we stand in a relationship with Jesus Christ as victors forgiven. Our lives may not look triumphant. Our minds may not think we're victors. But we have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and that means that the victory is assured because Christ is risen from the dead. So I guess the resurrection lesson for me, as I near the end of this chapter of my life. Shirley and I go back to the United States to significant uncertainty for our future, as we are concerned with the hows and wheres of living and future medical treatment. My lesson is this: when God is involved, how things appear, is not the complete story. There is always much, much more. Even though we may not know it, when we have Christ, we have enough. When we have Christ, we have everything we need, and heaven besides, because Christ is risen from the dead. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Father. You are kind and good. You love us and care for us. You cherish us and forgive us. And you hold for us life eternal. Thank you. May your kingdom come and your will be done through Christ our Lord.